Let's get started with our part 2, how to improve your positional play. We will begin with some positional masterpieces, but first, one very important rule: you're never going to manage your strategical goals if you try to follow a one-way street, if you just focus on one thing, or if you don't use tactics. This game we will see now is a perfect example for that, a victory by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, our French number 1, against Yangyi, one of the best Chinese player, who by then, because that game was played in 2009, was only 2500 rated. It was a Sveshnikov opening, so quite a good opening to teach some positional things, because you already see, actually this is already a big positional challenge, because black is kind of sacrificing these very important d5 squares. Of course he wants to get other assets in his position. So a very logical exchange. I'm going quickly here because this is just the main line, the main line of this very big opening. But of course, this is a very important exchange for white. You give away the bishop pair, but of course you kind of keep this very nice knight on d5, c4. This is the main move. White players used to try the move c3 with the same idea to bring the knight to e3. Without giving away the d4 square, but it is known now that c4 is a more critical move. b4, knight e2, this is the main line, short castle. Bishop e2 was played. Another move here, you can see this arrow showing you that at some point black would like to put this bishop on g5, and perhaps to, well, first of all to control some squares, maybe one day to exchange itself for the future knight on e3, but also maybe to play f5 one day. So another very critical move here is the move g3, which this has several ideas. One of them is that this is a very solid move, controlling the dark squares quite well. Another idea is that you want soon or late, and perhaps even soon, perhaps immediately, depending on what black is doing, to play h4 and bishop h3 and try to exchange this light squared bishop. And h4 has another advantage, that it is stopping this move bishop g5. Which we just saw. So here probably bishop g5 should be the line, and if white plays h4 now, the bishop can go to h6. Of course, now in case of bishop h3, black is not taking on h3 or allowing bishop take c8, because this bishop is very important to fight against the knight on d5. But here of course black would play bishop e6, so that if white wants to exchange the bishop, then he has to surrender this d5 square, because after f6 the knight would have to go away. So g3 is just another critical move, but bishop e2 is very interesting. After g3, white wants at some point to play bishop h3, but after bishop e2, white also wants to play bishop g4 at some point. a5 was played, defending the b4 pawn that was not hanging on the previous move, because after knight b4, take, queen b6, that would be too much counterplay. But of course, once white is going to castle at some point, this b4 pawn would be hanging, so a5 is a very useful move. Castle, bishop g4, queen d3. This is all theory. Of course, now white wants to put a rook to d1, and quite soon is going to challenge the biggest, actually the only black weakness in this position, but not a small one, the d6 pawn. Knight e7 was played. This is one move among others. Here bishop e6 is the main move. Another move which was tried, for example, by Elianov is the preparatory move rook a7, just waiting to see what white wants to do. But anyway, let's see the game. Knight e7. What black wants to do is to exchange one pair of knights, and he's kind of saying, look, you have only one knight, you have one knight to d5, I want to exchange it, and if you try to put another knight to e3 to go back to d5, then I'm going to exchange it. This has a point, of course, but we will see in that game that this strategy is not perfect. MVL refused the exchange of knights and played knight e3, and here black took on e3, took this knight. Well, the idea is, if white takes back with a knight, as he did in the game, black wants to play knight c6 and to try to enjoy this d4 square, which he had no access to when white had another knight on c2. But we will see that this is far from perfect. So I don't really like this move bishop takes e3. Maybe black should have just played some move like queen b6. Of course, white is enjoying a small space advantage. He plays, for example, the move b3. Maybe he will try king h1, g3, f4 at some point or something like that. Of course, rook a1 is also coming, so quite some problems for black, but I'm not sure this exchange on e3 is helping very much. Let's see the game. Bishop takes e3 was played, knight e3, knight c6, and here white should not hurry up to play the move knight c2. Here white did something extremely smart to play the move rook fd1, knight d4, and now knight c2 in order to exchange as the last pair of knights. At first it doesn't look very logical, because after knight c2, queen c2, white stands with his bad bishop and black has his good bishop, but in fact it turns out that this bishop e2 is not weaker than the bishop c8. White is just going to put this bishop on g4 at some point, as we said. And now you can see that this weakness on d6 is very difficult to defend. Now that the smoke has cleared, it is clear that black will have to use all of his major pieces to defend it, which is not something you like to do very much. Here there is already one big threat, which is a move c5, because the pawn on d6 is pinned, so black had to move the queen somewhere. Now what should white do? Of course he should try to target this d6 pawn, so he played the move rook d3. Bishop e6 was played, b3, defending the c4 pawn, rook a6. This is typical in the Sveshnikov to defend. You can see that after rook a1 and queen d2, the pawn will be attacked 3 times, so it is defended once. It will be defended another time by the f8 rook, and it has to be defended a 3rd time. So rook a6, quite a normal move. Queen d2 first was played, rook c6, rook a1, rook d8. Here it is clear that white is better, because black doesn't have a single plan, it just has to wait. But of course it is not so easy to concretize this advantage for white. You would like at some point to get the rook to d5, but black has this very strong defensive bishop on e6. You cannot push, you would like at some point to manage to push c5, but it will never work tactically because there are too many defensors. So now you should find a way to continue playing that game. You should find a plan. It is clear that you did all you could on the queen side in the center. So how to continue? Now white should try to do something on the king side. h3 was played. White wants to play bishop g4. Black played the move f6 because he doesn't want to exchange this bishop at any price. Of course, another strategy would have been to, let's say, wait, so play, for example, I don't know, king f8, bishop g4, and let's say continue waiting. But this is very unpleasant. Of course, this tension is favoring white. It is clear that black cannot afford an exchange on d4, for example, so black just has to wait. And for example, we could imagine something like, let's say, first plays the king to h2. At some point, white may like to play bishop f5 to try to provoke one more weakness, provoking the move g6, and f4 is going to come at some moment. So this is a tension that black did not want to have to handle, so he preferred to just hide his bishop to f7. Bishop g4, of course, bishop f7, so still we cannot play any move like rook d5, we have to continue, white has to continue on the king side. h4 was played, white wants to play h5, h6, and to create some more weaknesses. King f8, black is just waiting. Bishop f5 was played, of course h5 was also an option, but bishop f5 is also a smart move. We will see why in the game. So the h7 pawn is hanging. Black does not want to play g6 because then the pawn on f6 would be weak. He does not want to play h6 because it would create quite some weaknesses on the light squares. So he just played the move king g8. Black's strategy here is very clear. He's just waiting for white to take some decisions, to take some risk, and then he wants to find some counterplay. But for now there is nothing better to do than waiting. So we said white would like to play the move h5. Right now it looks like h5 is not possible because the pawn will be hanging. So I think many people here would play a move like, let's say, queen e2 trying to push h5 and would lose quite some time, but MVL did not intend it this way, and he played right away the move h5. As I explained earlier, white is helping himself with tactics to manage some strategical goals. Why? Because bishop takes h5 is tactically refuted by the very good move rook h3, bishop takes d1, queen d5 check, king f8 only move. In case of queen f7 there would be bishop e6 winning the queen, king f8, rook h7, and here, as the arrows indicate you, there is a very big threat, mate in 2, that is rook h8, king e7, queen e6 mate. And there is nothing clever that black can do against it. The only way to prevent this mate would be to play queen f7, but here, of course, after queen c6, white would be completely winning. It's threatening rook h8. The pawn on a5 is very weak. The bishop on d1 is kind of trapped. That's just a terrible position. Another winning move here actually would be not to hurry up taking back the rook, but to play queen a5. The threat is queen takes d8. Another threat is rook h8. And there is nothing clever black can do against it. If he plays king e7, then queen a7 is just mating. The king has to go back. Rook h8, queen g8. And here, of course, rook takes g8 would be completely winning, but there would be an even cuter finish and more efficient. Bishop e6. Threatening rook takes g8 mate, and also threatening queen f7 mate. There is nothing black can do to prevent both threats. Queen takes a5, so there is simply no move. If the rook goes somewhere, then check, king e7, queen a7, and on the next move queen takes f7. And if queen c7 here, then queen d5 back, and we got the same position as before, except you already took that pawn on a5. So the queen would have to go back, and now queen takes e6, and instead of targeting the a5 pawn, now we're going to target the b4 pawn right away, so this is even more winning. After rook h3, so bishop takes d1 is losing, but bishop g6, which is the only other option, is also losing. Bishop g6, h6, queen d5 check, winning in similar fashion. King f8, if queen f7, now the rook on c6 is hanging. Rook h8 is also winning the queen, so king f8 has to be played. And now you don't allow black to play king e7, you play, of course, queen e6, controlling all the squares, and rook h8 is the next move. It means that here black should continue going for passive defense. He has two choices here. The first choice to just wait and to allow white to push e6, forcing g6, but then the f6 pawn would be very weak. Second choice, to play h6 himself, but then his light squares would be very weak. So what did white just manage to do here? He managed to create a second weakness. And this is a rule that you will have to remember forever. Whenever your opponent has one weakness and it is not enough for you to win the game, you have to create a second one. So with all these moves, all these preparatory moves, with doubling on the, actually tripling on the d file, putting the bishop to f5 and then the pawn to h5, all these things were made to create a second weakness, and white succeeded. And now that this is done, you will see that the game becomes much easier for white. Black went for h6, so weaknessing the light squares. Queen e2, protecting the h5 pawn. Queen e7, black is just waiting. Rook g3, king f8. Now white should increase the pressure on the king side. How to manage this? You have to bring a second rook, so white played rook d3. Rook c7, black continues waiting. King h2, white does not have to hurry up. Rook a7. We may point out that the move queen e8, trying to put some pressure on the h5 pawn, is bad. If you do not understand why already, you may click on the pause button and try to figure out by yourself. It is not good because then white would manage his biggest strategical goal. He would manage to exchange the light squared bishops, and then it would be a quite easy win. We're going to see that in the game because Maxime succeeded, to make that exchange in the game. And of course, after this waiting move rook a7, if white plays bishop g6, black intends to move the bishop somewhere. Now we can see that the black position is very close to cracking. And to manage that, what white dreams to do is to manage to play rook g4 and rook dg3. After that, the game would be basically over. But it is not so easy to do it because, of course, if here white goes rook g4, then there will be bishop takes h5 winning for black. So how to manage this? Here MVL found a brilliant way. He played the move queen g4, forcing the black bishop to g8, queen d1 back, threatening c5 because of the pin on the d file. Black had to play rook c7 to prevent c5, and now finally rook g4 because the bishop went from f7 to g8. And now black had no choice but to surrender the strategical battle and to play the move bishop e6. It could be that he was planning for the move bishop f7 first, I'm just trying to guess, or it could be that he simply missed this idea queen g4, queen d1. But after bishop f7, rook dg3 is winning for white, because after bishop h5, rook g7, bishop d1, white is of course not taking the black queen, but is just delivering a mate in 2. So bishop e6 had to be played, bishop e6, queen e6, and now we are very happy. But can you see all these things, all these tactics that were used just to exchange these two bishops? This is just amazing. It lasted like some 10-15 moves just to manage this exchange, and now back to the queen side. Now that this exchange is done, the rook can go to d5, so we don't care anymore about the king side, we just want to collect some pawns on the queen side. Rook d5 was played, rook a7, rook g3 back, the rook is coming back to the queen side, just all the pieces are coming back to the queen side. Rook d7, just protecting the rook because c5 is coming very soon. Rook d7, queen d2, white is taking his time, king f7, king g1, king e8, rook d3, and slowly the position is collapsing. White is just taking his time, but you can see that all the pieces are penetrating the black position. So black has nothing to do but to wait. But slowly, now you can see that the a5 pawn is attacked, now the d6 pawn is attacked, rook d8, and now of course white is completely winning. He may even just play a move like c5, but here white found a nice tactics to finish off the game, play the move rook takes a5, and if black takes the rook, then rook b7, rook d7, rook b8, and mate to follow. So queen e7 was played, rook a7, queen a7, rook b4, and of course this is just completely winning for white. So pawn on a2 cannot even be taken because of rook b7 and mate on g7 to follow. So after rook takes b4, black played a couple of more moves and resigned. A real masterpiece by MVN, and I really liked how he got the most of his position everywhere on the board. First on the d file and then on the king side and then back to the queen side. By the way, there was even one very impressive moment in the game, this moment when finally he got everything he wanted. Look, from this moment on, he played one move on the queen side, one move on the king side, one move on the queen side, one move on the king side, again queen side, king side, another king side move, and then again queen side, then again king side. You see that he wants to absolutely dominate everything. Of course, his goal is to collect these queen side pawns, but it does not mean you have to play only on the king side, queen side. If you really want to achieve your strategical goals, you have to dominate the whole chessboard. So a really, I think, perfect game by MVL. Just to continue a bit on this d5 square subject, let's now see another example, a game won by Grandmaster Alexander Galkin with the white pieces against Grandmaster Pavel Anisimov. So first, let's have a look what is going on. White got the absolute utmost out of this kind of position. He has a fantastic rook on d5, a better bishop. Black already has a weakness on b5 that is stuck on b5, and the black rooks are stuck to defending that weakness. Still, it is not so easy for white to make progress. Of course, you would dream to get this bishop to a2, but if you play bishop b1, then black just plays queen c4. You cannot take on c4 because after bc4 you're going to lose the b2 pawn, and if you don't take, let's say you move the queen somewhere, then it did not help you to get the queen to c4 because you still cannot play bishop a2 on the next move. So that means it is not so easy to do something here, because black is of course on the worst side of the position, but is quite solid. So here you should seek for a second weakness. b5 is already one, d6 is, let's say, half one, because it is just too well defended. It is defending by the e7 bishop, and it is not like in the previous game that you could just put all the pressure on this d6 pawn. So you should create a second weakness somewhere. So what will be the first part of the plan? White is going to expand on the king side, and is going to open the h file and to take some space there. This is what he did in the game. Play the move g3, bishop f8, h4, queen e8. Black is allowing white to push his h pawn even further, because in case of h5, then this would be a very risky decision for black. For example, queen g2, king g2, black waits, and now g4, just opening everything, and black may get mated very soon. So black has no choice but to allow white to continue his expansion. h5 was played, black continues waiting, king g2, bishop e7, rook h1. Black is just waiting. So now what will be the second part of the plan? White wants to open the h file at some point, and he wants to manage to get his bishop to a2. But to get his bishop to a2, he should kind of draw the black queen attention to the king side, so there is no queen c4 problem anymore. So White just turned around a little bit and played some move on the king side. Black continued waiting. Here the players even repeated the position once. It doesn't matter because White can turn around as much as he wants. Then nothing happened for a couple of moves. Finally, at some point, White opened the h file. Then White brought his pieces back. And here we get a position that is quite similar to the initial one, except that we managed to open the h file clearly to our favor because we have a rook on h1. We managed to get the black queen to the king side, so it is time to start the second part of the plan and to play the move bishop b1. Queen e6 was played, bishop a2, rook b8. Now a small technical part that somehow you need to remove this rook from d5. It is very easy to manage it. You cannot do it right away because the bishop on a2 will be hanging, but you can just protect it. And on the next move, you're going to remove your rook from d5. Queen c8 was played. The rook went away. Now we got this fantastic bishop on his best possible diagonal. Rook h1 was played. And now if you look at the position, this is still a weakness. Now the bishop is a little bit stuck to the defense of his own king, so this became also a weakness. But also, g6 is a weakness because after queen g4 it will be attacked. f7 is a weakness because after rook f3 it will be attacked. So just too many weaknesses. The king is also quite weak. So now that's simply a technically winning position for White. Queen g5, rook h4, rook g4. So queen has to go to h6 because queen f6 will just lose immediately. Queen h6 was played, and now White should just optimize his position even more, and then at some point he's just going to open everything, probably with some move like f4. But first he should continue optimizing. Queen f3 was played, king f8, rook d1, threatening rook h1. So now Black had to play g5 to make room for his queen, but that's definitely too many weaknesses. Queen f5, bishop f6, defending the g5 pawn, check, king e7, the bishop to d5, rook a7, rook h1, queen g6, and here you can see that Black cannot move anything. He cannot move any of his rooks, he cannot move his bishop, his queen has also no square, he cannot move his king, so that's just totally lost for Black, and it is time just to open everything and win the game. So White played f4, and now this is just game over. Black took on f4, gf4, he tried to look for some counterplay on the king side, on the queen side, but nothing is happening, and after ba3 Black resigned. Of course he cannot take back on a3 because of queen c7 check. So why did I explain this game so quickly? Because I wanted to make something complicated sound simple for you. You can see that the White plans were actually quite simple. First to expand on the king side, then to open the h file, then to get the bishop to a2, and then finally to bring back the pieces to the king side, and at the end open everything. If I say it that way, I'm sure you found it very simple, but of course over the board it takes some energy, it takes some thinking before you manage to realize such a plan. So really great game by Alexander Galkin. Many players tend to believe that opposite squared bishop positions with equal material are always drawish. The last example was already a good one that this is not true, and that sometimes having the better bishop, the more active bishop, may just lead to a decisive advantage. We will now see one more example, a game played by Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces against Sergei Karyakin. This is not yet an opposite squared bishop positions, but we will soon get to it. Here Magnus wanted to exchange queens. You can see that the white position, White has a bishop here, but his position is a little passive. So if White would manage to exchange queens, then he would have some freedom to try to open the position and play, for example, rook b1 and b3. So to exchange queens, Magnus played the move king h2. Karyakin played rook c8. Magnus offered a queen's exchange, which Karyakin accepted. To be honest, this is not a move that I would play as black. I don't think this is... I would call it a mistake, even if it is not such a bad move. I would definitely prefer to play a move like f5 here with black. And here, for example, critical might be h5, g5, and g4, trying to force the move f4, and then get the bishop to e4. But here, for example, let's say black would give a check, king g1, for example, f4 anyway, bishop e4, threatening bishop f5, for example, rook f8, bishop f5, rook f5, gf5, queen f6, and if you look at the white pieces, it is a very passive position. The h5 pawn will be lost, and then maybe later black will somehow manage to push g4. For example, he may go king h7 and g4 with the rook coming to g7, and this is clearly a position that I would prefer to play as black. So, well, I really believe that Magnus's life would have been much tougher if black had played f5, but anyway, Karyakin took on h3, and this is at least giving us a very nice example of positional game. So, king takes h3, h5, rook b1. At some point white would like to play b3, rook a8. Here there is no reason to rush so much in playing the move b3. There is nothing black can do, he only has to wait, so white is taking his time, first bringing his king a little bit closer. Rook a6 was played, b3 anyway. There is no point bringing the king the other way around, because later it is probably that way that the king will like to make progress. So the king is perfect on g2, everything is, all the pieces are optimized, so now there is no reason not to play the move b3. A b3, rook b3, bishop f6. The next moves are not so relevant, just not many things happened. Until this moment, when, like in almost all the positional games, finally a tactical sequence happened, and Karyakin here played the move knight c3. Magnus answered very well, played bishop f4. You can see that the rook already doesn't have that many squares, it cannot go to d8, for example, because of bishop c7. It also cannot go to d7 because there will be bishop c6, and again the rook has no square. So rook e6 was played by Karyakin, this is the only move, and now excellent move by Magnus, not defending this pawn on a4, playing the move e3. Karyakin played knight takes a4, to which Magnus answered bishop d5, and again black has a problem that his rook has no square. Rook e7 was played, that's the best move. In case of rook e8 there would be bishop c6, winning some material. Rook e7, bishop d6, white is winning an exchange, but black has a very nice answer here. He played the move b5, with the idea that after bishop e7, which is forced because the rook is attacking the bishop, bishop e7, king, bishop e7, rook b5, black can play knight b6, and he's collecting back this exchange that he lost on the previous move. And here is the key moment for our subject. On the next move, black is going to get the exchange back, and then it will be an opposite squared bishop position. White has two choices here. Choice number one is to take a pawn on d5, on d4. Why? It is not really an option for black to play knight d5, because after dc5, white will have two very strong passed pawns, and this is clearly the kind of position that would be very bad for black. Is going to put a rook on white is going to put a rook to b7. So for example, let's say rook c6, then for example check, rook b7, let's say king back, and then d4. And on the next move the rook is going to go to a4, and this is just a very bad position for black. So ed4, what would be critical would be knight takes c4, bishop takes c4, rook a1 check, honey move, because cd4 there would be rook b8 check, winning the rook. Rook a1 check, king g2, cd4, for example rook b8 check, rook b7, king back, and rook d7, and the d4 pawn is lost. So basically white is here after the move e takes d4, winning a pawn by force. But this position is quite drawish, because even if you get the d4 pawn, then black is not having a passive bishop. He may try to find some counterplay on the f2 pawn, or he may just play, for example, rook a8, rook d4, rook d8. Of course, taking on d8 would bring white no winning chances. The rook has to go somewhere, and now bishop f6, and then the bishop may go to d4, or maybe the rook may go to d4, and black is having a very solid position, and white does not have real perspectives here. That would be a very easy draw for black. However, white has another choice here, which is the move e4, forcing knight takes c4, bishop takes c4, or rook b8 check first, and then bishop takes c4. Here white does not have an extra pawn, but if you look at the position, he has a wonderful bishop on c4 and black has a very bad bishop on e7. White is having a target which is the f7 pawn, and also white is having a majority here, 4 versus 3, while black does not really have a majority in the center because the pawn on c5 is completely stuck on c5. It is not just a useless pawn, but it is even kind of making the bishop unable to be, the black bishop unable to become active. Galkin played rook a7, thus defending the 7th rank. f4 was played. It is very important here to point out that the black rook is unable to cut the white king. That would be a terrible news, but fortunately the a2 square is controlled. Otherwise it would not be such a big deal. White would simply have to start with the move king g2. So f4 was played. Galkin played bishop d6, rook e8, and now Galkin found a very good defensive move, the move rook b7. This move has two big threats, extremely big threats. One of them is to play, of course, rook b2, just cutting the white king on the second rank, but an even bigger one is to play the move rook b8, and if black can manage to exchange rocks, that will be a dead draw. So Magnus found a way to solve both problems, and he played the move rook a8, forbidding a rook exchange, and also the move rook b2 is no longer possible because of rook a7. Bishop e7 was played. Now rook b2 is a threat, so white is just advancing his king. Rook b1, e5, just opening a path for his king to d5. Rook e1, king f2. Now for a couple of moves, not much happened. Magnus was just turning around until he realized that it is not so easy to find a winning plan here. Until this very moment. Rook b1. And now, what is necessary for white to win this game? He needs to manage to push his kingside pawns. If the white pawn would not be on h4 but h2, that would be a very easy win for white. He would just have to push h3, g4, f5, and then f6 check. That would just be a win by force because black is completely paralyzed. But with a pawn on h4, it is not so easy to manage this. Second thing we can say is that white is kind of having an extra pawn because this pawn on c5 is not really a pawn, it is not a threat. It may become on the long term, but at the moment white is simply playing 4 versus 3 and is not worse on the other side. So how could white continue playing that game? There is one rule that says that in opposite squared bishop endings, the material is not the most important, activity is the most important. So you should sometimes be able to sacrifice something in order to make this activity even bigger. And this is what Magnus did here. He played the move g4. Black has no choice here but to take on g4. Of course, he cannot allow white to take on h5 and then push f5 for free. So at least he should take some pawns. And now Magnus sacrificed the second one, playing h5, with the idea that if black takes on h5, he's going to play f5. And if black does not take on h5, he's already threatening the move h6 check, winning the f8 bishop. So here black has two choices, to play the move gh5 or to play rook h1 to force white to take on g6, since rook h1 is controlling the h6 square. In the game, Galkin went for the latter one. He played rook h1, but this is already quite a bad move. Here black had to be brave and to accept the other white gift, to allow white to push f5, and now the computer finds a miraculous defense for black. He plays here the move h4, f6. Here black cannot afford a passive defense playing king g8, because white is just playing e6 and winning the game. So he has to advance with his king g6, rook f8, and now the engine finds king f5, just advancing the black king, forgetting about the f7 pawn, and he believes that here black is saving the game. For example, if black goes rook f7, now black is even winning because he gives a check. And for example, say king e2, another check, the king cannot go to f3 because of a mate on f2, king f1, g2 check, h3, and black is just winning, rook b1 is coming on the next move. So with the support of the black king, these h and g pawns become extremely dangerous. Here white should play rook g8, and now the engine is just giving checks, rook b2, king e1, rook b1, and if white does not want to make a draw, he should go to d2, Still white has a threat to push e6 on the next move and then to queen his f pawn, but this is not working for white. Now black takes on e5, rook h4, g3, and black is better because the move rook g4 is answered by g2 because of the misplaced king on d2, rook g2, rook b2 check, and black wins. That means that after this double pawn sacrifice by Magnus, black was able, with extremely precise defense, to save the game. That does not mean that Magnus did anything wrong. That does not mean that Magnus was not better, but sometimes we have to accept that chess is a drawing game if you play against a computer, and it is not very relevant for a practical game that the computer is able to find so many only moves in a row to defend the game. So that was anyway a very nice double sacrifice by Magnus, double pawn sacrifice, and the proof of it is that even a strong player like Karyakin was unable to assess this position after gh5 and play the human move rook h1, just stopping h6 check. Magnus took on g6, fg6, now played rook e6. The target became the pawn on g6. He wants to play bishop d5 and bishop e4. Black played king h6, bishop d5, and now black is just getting destroyed. Here he went for the only logical continuation, which was to give a check, king g3, and another check to at least collect this pawn on d3. White took on g4, rook d3, and now pushed f5. Another option was to play bishop e4, rook e3, rook g6 check, king h7. White has a discovery check, but for the moment the bishop on e4 is hanging, but here probably bishop f5 should be winning for white. There is a terrible, well, let's say that black cannot push his pawns, because if he pushes any of them, then white will just give a check and collect a pawn. But let's say king h8 looks like the human move, and now bishop e6, for example, threatening rook g8, and then the king is coming, and the black king is in a mating net. This should be also winning for white. But what Magnus did is also good, f5, very logical, just with the same idea to collect the pawn on g6, but to already advance his f-pawn. Rook e3 was played, rook g6 check, king h7, bishop g8 check, getting the black king even further, king h8, and now white has to be careful. He could push his e-pawn, for example, but then it would turn out that the black d-pawn is much more dangerous than the white e-pawn. Actually, black would be winning here. So white has to play a smart move here, which Magnus found. He played the move king f4, defending the e-pawn, but also preventing black from pushing his d-pawn. Rook c3 was played by Karyakin. Rook e1 may have looked a little bit more logical, but then white would just play bishop c4, just paralyzing the black pawns and threatening rook g8 check. So rook c3 was played. Now Magnus pushed his pawns, d3, king e3, not allowing black to push his d-pawn even further, c4, bishop e6, a very important move. Here white is playing to mate the black king. There was a last trick that white should not play the move e6 here, because it would be answered by bishop c5 check, and again the black d-pawn becomes very dangerous in case of king d2, then check, king d1, bishop e3, and it is white who is getting mated. So bishop e6, a very smart move, threatening rook g8 check. Black played king h7. Now the difference is if black would play bishop c5 check, then the white king would not go to d2, but it would go to f4, because rook h6 check is a terrible threat. And for example, king h7, bishop f5, and black is going to get mated very soon. King h8, check, check, and mate. So a very dangerous mating net. Black played here the move king h7. Of course white played bishop f5. And now, for example, if the black king is going back to h8, white just plays f7, threatening rook g8 mate. Bishop g7, for example, rook g1, threatening rook h1. And there is simply no defense for black here. So instead of king h8 in the game, Karyakin decided to play rook c2, just trying to deliver some checks. But of course here there are many wins for white. Computer shows many winning moves, but Magnus went for the most human one, for the most simple one. He played here the move rook d2 check, going for a winning opposite squared bishop endgame. King h6 was played, rook c2, dc2, bishop c2, and the white pawns are far too advanced. This is just an easy win for white. King g5 was played, king d4. Here Karyakin found the smartest defense, trying to attack the white pawns from behind. He played the move bishop a3, but this is not enough. White even just collected this pawn on c4. Bishop b2, king d5, king f4. White, black is one move away from making a draw, but of course he's not making it. f7, bishop a3, e6, king g5 back, and black is not in time to get his king to f8. Obviously, king c6, king f6, king d7, king g7, and now e7, and black resigned. So very nice positional example on how to handle opposite squared bishop positions with an advantage. Although Karyakin with incredibly precise defense could have saved the game, this was a very instructive technique by Magnus Carlsen, especially, well, first the decision not to capture the pawn on d4 but to play the move e4, remember, and then this double pawn sacrifice is extremely instructive one, even if black could have managed to save a draw.